I want to talk about things in our lives that simply cannot be replaced. If your house catches fire or your car gets broken into, our modern world has a system for that. Insurance handles the damages. You fill out some paperwork, you get a check in the mail, you buy a new laptop, you replace the shattered window, and you move on. The system works. The physical items are replaced and life continues. But what happens when someone steals something from you that has absolutely no cash value, but holds your entire heart? What happens when the loss is entirely irreplaceable? That is the exact nightmare a woman named Sarah faced on a rainy Tuesday evening. She had parked her car downtown, running into a local coffee shop for just 20 minutes. When she returned, her heart dropped. Her passenger side window was completely shattered. Glass was scattered across the asphalt and spread all over her car seats. But Sarah didn't care about the broken glass. She didn't care about the radio or the loose change. Her eyes darted immediately to the back seat, and a suffocating wave of grief washed over her. Gone was a heavy, polished mahogany box that had been sitting securely on that seat. To the thieves, it probably looked like a fancy jewelry case or an expensive piece of audio gear. But to Sarah, it was the most precious thing she owned. Inside that box were the ashes of her beloved golden retriever, Buster, who had passed away just 6 days prior after 14 years of being her absolute constant companion. When Sarah realized what was taken, she collapsed into the driver's seat. She was consumed by a deep, hollow panic, knowing that her final physical connection to her companion was likely tossed into a dumpster by people who didn't care and were just looking for a quick score. Desperate and crying, she didn't call the police to file a standard report. She knew they couldn't track down a wooden box. Instead, she turned to community forums and social media, like a lot of people do. She posted a photo of Buster and a picture of the mahogany box, begging whoever took it to just leave it somewhere safe. She wrote, "Keep the box if you want it, just leave the ashes, please." So Sarah puts the message out into the digital void, but deep down, she really didn't expect a miracle to happen. Once something disappears into the alleyways of a major city, you rarely ever see it come back. Now, turn your attention to a few miles away in a dimly lit, narrow alleyway behind a grocery store. A man named Michael was setting up his camp for the night. Michael had no involvement with the car break-in. He had just been experiencing homelessness for about 2 years now. He owned a weathered sleeping bag and a backpack with a few changes of clothes and very little else. As the rain started to pick up, Michael was looking through a stack of discarded shipping pallets, trying to find clean cardboard to insulate his sleeping space from the freezing concrete ground. When he lifted a piece of plastic, something caught his eye. Resting gently on top of an overflowing trash heap was a discarded, polished mahogany box. So Michael picked it up. He opened the brass latch. He didn't find gold. He didn't find jewelry or electronics or money. Inside, he found a small velvet pouch and a certificate from a local vet. Michael didn't have much, but he had a big heart. He instantly understood exactly what he was holding. He knew the profound weight of what he had in his hands. Let's look at Michael's reality. He had every reason to keep moving and focus on himself. He was so cold, his boots were soaked through, and he hadn't eaten a hot meal in 2 days. And navigating the city to track down a complete stranger is an incredibly difficult logistical hurdle when you don't own a smartphone or don't have money to get anywhere. Nobody would have blamed him if he just left the box there where he found it and focused on his own problems. But Michael chose a different path. He took off his own heavy winter coat, the most valuable item he owned to protect himself from all the elements, and he wrapped it around that tiny wooden box to keep the rain from seeping into the wood. He spent the night shivering, guarding a stranger's prized memories. The very next morning, Michael walked 3 miles in the freezing rain to a local community drop-in center. He asked the volunteer at the front desk if he could use their computer for just 5 minutes. So Michael typed in the name from the veterinary certificate, was able to find Sarah's desperate community post, and asked the volunteer to call the number listed. An hour later, Sarah pulled up to the center. When she stepped out of the car and saw Michael standing under the awning, holding that mahogany box safely against his chest, she burst into tears. She tried to hand him every single dollar bill she had in her purse, but Michael waved it off. He looked at her right in the eyes and said, "I lost my dog a few years ago. I know how much it hurts to lose family. I just wanted to make sure he got home to you." Michael had absolutely nothing to his name, yet he treated a total stranger's grief as his own highest priority. Now, when the local neighborhood heard about what Michael had done, they refused to let his story end right there. A crowdfunding campaign quickly went viral, raising over $40,000, enough to get Michael into a permanent apartment, a medical checkup, and a real fresh start in his life. This single act of quiet integrity completely rewrote his own life story because real goodness has a beautiful way of echoing back to us. We talk about this a lot. And when I look for stories for this podcast, I'm not searching for the ripple effect, but man, it just keeps showing up. I hope you're enjoying hearing these stories as much as I do researching them and finding them for you. My whole goal here, starting Briefly Good, is to get people's mindset in a better place. I was in a bad place myself, looking at too much negative political information, and it was really taking a toll on my mental health. So I started looking at all good, positive content, and it's changing my brain slowly, but I'm impressed with what's happening so far. And I want to help other people while I'm helping myself get my head straight. So I hope you like these. Subscribe, comment, share them with whoever else you think could benefit from it. So on Briefly Good's weekly episodes, we tell one feel-good story, which we just did, and now we lead into an actionable strategy, which can help you overcome some things in your life that maybe are holding you back or making you feel not so good. This week's episode, I want you to start your own heart insurance project. We spend so much energy insuring our cars, locking up laptops, protecting all the physical assets we have in our life. But this week, I want you to identify just one thing in your life or your neighborhood that has zero cash value, but holds a huge piece in your heart. Like maybe a fading family recipe, a collection of photos, an elderly neighbor's life stories, maybe. It could really be anything. Spend some time actively protecting that, however that may work out. Maybe record the story or digitize some old photos, or just put these items maybe in a safer place. Somehow find a way to guard the invisible essentials that insurance could never replace. So an example in my own personal life is a pork pie recipe, of all things. It goes back to my wife's grandmother, who had this recipe written down. It's a French pork pie. If you're not familiar, it's basically ground pork, some ground beef, potatoes, and some seasoning. I'm not going to give away the recipe. All in a bakery, flaky pie crust. It's a big thing for my wife's family during the holidays, especially Christmas Eve. So we have this recipe that's written down on this piece of paper that looks kind of like a treasure map. But the ink on this has started to fade. And a few years ago, I was getting concerned that this might get damaged while cooking or the ink might fade more. I had trouble making out some of the text on it, actually. So I sent it over to my wife's cousin. So she takes some time to kind of decode the whole thing for me and figure out the words that I couldn't quite distinguish. So now we have it. We've got this pork pie recipe in a couple different places. I've also taken pictures of it to ensure that this carries on a great tradition that they have in their family. And no, I cannot give you the exact recipe. So do your own audit. Find the irreplaceable things in your life and put your own type of heart insurance on them to ensure that they're still a part of your life. And we always finish up with a positive quote. And this one comes to us, excuse the pronunciation, from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. And his quote is, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." That's your Briefly Good weekly micro podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Get out there and do something good, even if it's brief.